Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning digital entrepreneur and marketer. And today I want to share with you 8 lessons I learned over 20 years being an entrepreneur. So one thing we all know is that experience teaches us if we're only willing to listen. In every walk of life, every single thing that we do produces results. And so if we decide that we want to learn from that, we can understand lessons that we can figure out, and we can benefit from that, both in terms of things that we're going to do again in the future, things that we can learn that work, things that don't work, and things that we can share or that we can see that other people did, so we know whether to do them or not ourselves. So the cool thing about it is that it isn't just our own experience. That's valuable in and of itself. But the fact is, we can actually learn from other people's experiences as well, because as other people go through things and they experience things, they're going to learn lessons. And if they share those with us, then we're able to go ahead and figure that out for ourselves and maybe sort of shortcut some things or avoid some pitfalls and some other problems that we might run into if we had to do it all ourselves. You know, the perfect example of this on a really day-to-day basis is product reviews or experiences, right? So when we go to buy a product, when we go to indulge in a service or whatever it is, one of the things that a lot of people do, especially now in the internet age, is look up product reviews. And what's the reason for that? The reason for that is to understand from someone else's perspective that's like us what they experienced by using the product or service. Did they like it? What did they like? What didn't they like? What things would they change? Are there other products that they would recommend instead? And even though we don't know them, even though they're not somebody that we've ever personally had any contact with, we gain experience, we gain insight from their experience with the product. You know, it's funny, there's a whole series of videos on YouTube. There are channels devoted to this that are literally just unboxing videos. They basically buy something, whether it's a piece of technology or whatever, and they unwrap it live on camera and they video it. And so you can see from the perspective of the person who bought it. So you can sort of simulate, if you were to buy this, this is the experience you're going to see. You get to see what the packaging looks like. You get to see what things look like internally, all the different pieces, how it goes together, what the instruction manual looks like, the person's first reactions to it. The whole purpose of all of that is for us to learn from other people's experiences what sort of results that they got, what sort of reaction they had, so we can know whether we want to do the same thing, whether we want those experiences, whether we want those products, or whether we want to avoid them because it's not a good experience. And business and entrepreneurship is exactly the same, which is awesome, because what it means is that we can learn a lot of lessons if we just listen to each other and share our own stories in terms of things that we've experienced, things that we've done that have worked, things that we've done that have not worked, and everything in between. So over the past 20 or so years, I've had the fortunate experience of being able to not only be an entrepreneur, but I've actually had multiple businesses, and I've known a lot of people that have had businesses. And so throughout the course of that time, I've actually learned a lot about being an entrepreneur and about running a business. And I've learned some really good things and some lessons that I'm very excited that I know. And I've learned some things that were devastating and difficult to learn, but nonetheless equally valuable and important, because they're things that I know to avoid in the future. And hopefully, you know, those are mistakes that you won't make, but we're all going to make our own. So some lessons have been really exciting and others have been really costly and devastating. But regardless, that's all part of the package. It all goes with the territory. When you own a business, when you're an entrepreneur, you're basically going to have those kinds of experiences. And so we take the highs, we take the lows, and everything in between. And obviously, what we want to try to do is we want to maximize the number of highs we have, and we want to minimize the number of lows, right? We want to minimize the number of mistakes, and we want to maximize the number of things we do that are good in order to achieve success in the fastest, easiest way possible. So I want to share with you some of those valuable lessons that I've learned along my journey, because I think that they're really important and they're things that I would have loved to have known then. Hopefully I would have actually taken them with that sort of wisdom and take them into account and listen. Sometimes we have to learn the lesson ourselves before we really understand it. But hopefully my experiences and wisdom, if we can call it that, will help you have as smooth, fast, and straight a path as possible to your goals and to whatever it is that you want to achieve as an entrepreneur and a business owner. So the first one is that we're more likely to succeed doing something that we're passionate about versus something that looks profitable. It's very easy to think, there's a new industry or, there's a new niche and it looks like it's sort of, this blue ocean with a lot of hunting that we can go do there and make a lot of money. And a lot of people have sort of fallen into that trap. It's funny because the very first, real, you could say, business that I owned was a custom configure computer business. And the way I got into that is I was interested in computers. So it isn't that I wasn't interested. Whether or not I was passionate about it, you could make an argument. But the fact is, I actually went to a computer show with one of my friends to help him because he knew I was technical and he wasn't, and he wanted to get a computer, so he wanted my opinion. And when I saw all these components being sold at cheap prices, I sort of helped him buy the components he needed to build a PC, and I built it for him. And I realized, geez, that was a couple $100 less than what you would have paid to get one completely made and sent to you mail order or gone to the store to buy. And that was the impetus for starting a business. Probably not the best idea. It's important to understand there's profitability where you want to do business, but it isn't based on the profitability that makes you go into the business. And in that particular case, it was. And unfortunately, that business had a pretty nice run for a short time, but market forces and things changed and made it really difficult to stay competitive there. And it wasn't something that I ever had such a burning passion about, that when things were changing, I was there in a way where I would have been able to make adjustments necessary to get it going. Now, if we sort of flip that to what I currently do in the digital marketing space, the reason I got into that was passion. It wasn't passion about digital marketing itself, but it was passion about the idea of creating a lifestyle where I would be able to, be home more often and spend more time with my family, do all these other things and create a lifestyle with freedom and with a lot of flexibility. And so that, and then there were elements of the digital marketing that I had defined that I was super passionate about as well. And that's why I got into software. That's why I do the podcast, things like that. And so those were basically the ideas that sort of, I focused on there. And because I was so passionate about that, I had just as many obstacles as I had in the other business. But I was able to weather that, and I was able to continually adjust and adapt and evolve because the why there was so important. It was so important to me to be able to make that work that I wasn't going to accept any other sort of result or answer. And so chasing your passion, not your wallet, is super important in terms of doing something that's entrepreneurial. There may be something that's an easy business to start or simple for you because you have some sort of leg up or you have some experience or whatever. But if it isn't something that you're really passionate about, it's going to be very hard to withstand the downs and the obstacles and the roadblocks that we run into, as every entrepreneur does, because that passion isn't the thing that drives us. When that's the thing in the back pushing us forward, there isn't any obstacle we can't overcome. And that's the beautiful thing about that. The second lesson is that taking action is the only way things happen. It's funny because I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I have, a master's degree. I liked going to school. I liked going to college. And I just like it in general. I like to read articles. I like to listen to podcasts. I like to watch videos. And they can be entertaining. But I also like things that are educational. I just like learning for learning's sake. And for some reason, I find that very satisfying and fulfilling. So the interesting thing is, when I was getting into digital marketing, one of the things that I was doing is I had to learn how the business worked. Because the fact is, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't have a track record in digital marketing. I didn't transition from a corporate job doing exactly what I was doing to start my own business doing that too. I was like a fish out of water in a completely different environment that I had to learn from the ground up. And so I started by learning. And what I found is that every time I uncovered something, I discovered a bunch of other things I didn't know either. So then I needed to investigate those. And while I found that fascinating, and while I found that very, enriching in certain ways, what I ultimately realized is when I looked up after 3 months of doing all this research and learning, I knew a lot of stuff. But when I really assessed and evaluated, I wasn't any closer to achieving the dream because I hadn't done anything. There was literally no action I took. Didn't have a single subscriber on my list, had never made a single sale, didn't have any digital products to sell, didn't have any websites, didn't have anything. And so I started to just take action. And I didn't have all the answers when I started. I just started doing it because I said, you know what, I know enough now to get started. I'll learn the rest as I go. And that is a really valuable lesson because we do learn on the fly. And in fact, we learn better than we do from anything that we can learn otherwise. And so it's important to have a baseline information of what we need to do. But once we start to do it, we need to be alert and smart and evaluate what's going on. But at the same time, we need to take action to make it go. So, like what I like to say is that learning is a comfortable place to hide from doing because it feels very safe, right? We haven't tried anything yet, so there's no way we could have failed. And that was sort of where I was. I was in this groove where I felt really good because I was, getting to start the business, but I hadn't started it yet. I hadn't done anything. So I also couldn't have failed because I didn't try. And so we've got to get out there. We've got to do stuff. We've got to try things because otherwise we feel safe, but we don't get anywhere. And, so ultimately nothing happens until we start to take action. The third thing, and this is a lesson that I actually wish I learned a lot younger and a lot sooner, is that having a mentor or a model is the closest we can get to guaranteed success. I, full disclosure, didn't have one, right? I tried to model other people's businesses, other entrepreneurs that I knew in my space that were successful, but I never had a mentor in that traditional way in the business world. And so for me, I feel as though I could have accomplished a lot more, a lot faster had I had that. Because when I've had experiences where I could learn from other people, I've been able to find sort of those distinctions that get me to where I need to go faster, a lot quicker and easier with a lot less trial and error. I actually even equate this to sports, right? In sports, we have coaches. And you have people that are the best in the world at what they do, and yet they still have coaches. And you think, well, why would somebody like that have a coach? Because they're already the best in the world at it. Well, the fact is, nothing is going to help you better than a mentor or a coach who can basically look at it and say, evaluate what you're doing, do it objectively, and tell you what things need to change. I was a javelin thrower in high school and college. And I, was pretty good throughout high school, and I got to college, and I started to get better and better. And as I got fully grown and developed, I plateaued a little bit. And we brought in a new coach my junior year, and one of the amazing things is, literally, he watched me throw, and I had done videos of myself, and I had broken down the video and analyzed it and tried to find what I could do better. And this guy had experience as a throwing coach. And so he said, just go take a handful of throws. Let me take a look at what you do, and we'll analyze this. So he does this, and 5 minutes later, after I've thrown it a few times, he comes over and he says, listen, this is what I want you to do. He recognized something in my technique that was a little bit off, that if I made a little tweak, I'd be able to throw it a lot further. And in less than 10 minutes, he could do what took me, a couple of years to not be able to figure out. And so he was able to help me make that distinction. I had a mentor or a coach, if you want to call it, in that arena, and that really helped. But in the business world, I did not. And I recommend for anybody that if you have the opportunity to get a mentor or somebody that you can model closely, it's the closest thing we can get to guaranteed success, because they're going to not only give us advice that is useful and valuable, but because they've been there, because they've already seen what success looks like, they can help navigate that road a lot easier and quicker. The fastest way to get to where we're going, right, is to follow someone who's been there. I mean, it's that simple, right? I mean, if they've been there already, then we know. If we're trying to, find our hotel or our, party destination or whatever, and we're following someone who's already been there, it's a lot easier. Sure, now we have GPS in our phone, but if we're out in the hills and the GPS doesn't work, we've got to drive around until we find it. But if we're following someone on the way there, it's really easy and fast to get there and to do it without any mistakes. So that's a really, really valuable lesson. The fourth lesson is that we can't do it all alone and need others to help achieve the dream. The thing of it is, as entrepreneurs, one of the things that's sort of a blessing and a curse is that we have this inherent belief in our own ability and our own effectiveness and the fact that we can get things done, and oftentimes get them done better than anybody else or whatever else. But the fact is, we can only do so much ourselves. And so until we sort of enlist the help of other people, until we leverage that, until we find those ways where we can get the results from other people, it's going to be impossible. We're going to be capped or limited in what we're capable of doing and becoming. I like to think that 20% of a pot of gold is better than 100% of an empty pot. So, it's, and the old saying that you hear all the time in sports is, right, teamwork makes the dream work. And the fact of the matter is, it's absolutely true from the perspective of, if we're trying to do something that's bigger than ourselves, it's egotistical and ridiculous to think that we're going to be able to do it all on our own. We're going to need to enlist help, and we're going to need to be able to do that. One of my pet peeves from the show Shark Tank that I like to watch sometimes with my kids or whatever is we'll watch and we look at the various ideas and innovations, and I give the people a lot of credit. These people are entrepreneurs. They have great ideas. They have visions. They create cool products and stuff. But it makes me want to scream when I see somebody come on the show and they've got a basement full of products. They're not making any sales. They don't have any marketing plan. All they had was an idea for a product, and they have no way to distribute it. And a shark will tell them, listen, I'll give you X amount of money. I'll plug you into my distribution network. I want 50% of the company. And they say no. The person says no because they so are intent on keeping every nickel but they're keeping every nickel of zero because they're not making any money. They don't have any plan for sales. This person is someone who's been there. This person is someone who's connected and can get them to where they need to be faster than almost anyone else they're ever going to meet, and yet they turn it down. It's short-sighted. What they don't realize is that by making that deal, yes, they're going to earn less percent or less money overall, but they're going to have a success under their belt that now you can write books about, you can leverage that, you can get other financing, you can start new ventures because you have a success you could fall back on. That is worth more in the currency than the actual money they're going to make in that first venture. And it drives me nuts when I see that because it's so short-sighted. So we need other people to help us do it, whether they're people that we're hiring or outsourcing or partners or whatever it is. But we can't do it all alone. The fifth one is that time is our scarcest and most valuable resource, right? So it's easy to think, and I used to always think when I was young, well, if there's anything that I can do that just requires my time, no big deal. I've got unlimited time. I can work through this and I can make this thing happen. As I've gotten older, what I started to realize is that time is actually the scarcest resource. It's the thing that we want to leverage the most we can so we can have most of it back to do what we want with it. Because the fact of the matter is there are only a certain number of hours in a day, so many days in a year, and so many years on the planet. And so we want to be able to spend those in the best way possible. And so again, if we look back at some of these other examples, the idea of leverage, if we can get somewhere that we need to go faster, if we can automate, if we can simplify, those are all things that we want to be able to do in our business because they're things that protect our time and reclaim our time for ourselves, which is super valuable. The sixth thing is that there will be challenges and obstacles regardless of how well we plan. We could be the most meticulous planner in the world, and we could have everything laid out perfectly. And no matter what, there are going to be obstacles and there are going to be challenges and problems along the way. So we need to just accept that. We need to not internalize it or believe that it has anything to do with our own internal flaws or inability to see the future or whatever else, and just recognize that it's part of business. And part of the value of building a business is the fact that you gain a lot of you gain a lot of gratitude, and you gain a lot of positive feelings about the fact that you're able to work through problems. It creates resourcefulness in us, and it creates resilience, and that's super important and valuable to any entrepreneur or anyone in any walk of life, really. The seventh one is getting perspective can save you from making life-changing mistakes. When we are in the midst of something and the sort of storm is swirling and we feel like things are going badly, it can be very easy to make a knee-jerk reaction. My wife used to laugh at me and call me a hypochondriac because anytime I had sort of a twinge in my side or in my back or whatever, is it this condition, is it that condition? You start to Google things and look them up, and then you think you have all of these crazy, life-threatening conditions, when in fact 2 days later it was a pulled muscle and it goes away. Well, one of the things that I've learned about my own health is that with anything, if there's any symptom, you sort of let it go. And it's if it's persistent that it becomes an issue, not if it happens, because a lot of stuff will just go away on its own. And business is a lot the same thing. We don't want to overreact or have a knee-jerk reaction to any one particular thing that happens in an instant. We want to look at the trends. We want to look at the history. We want to see where things are going. Super important to be able to step back, gain perspective, and understand what's really going on. Sometimes there really is an issue that needs to be addressed. Sometimes it's a minor fluctuation and everything will be back on track. So it just depends, but it's super important not to make knee-jerk reactions and instead to step back and gain perspective so we make the best decisions possible from a place of analytics and not emotion. And the last thing, the eighth thing, is that being an entrepreneur and a business owner can give us the lifestyle we dream about. It's super important to recognize that, depending on who you listen to, if you're following the carrot, then entrepreneurship seems like the greatest thing in the world. If you listen to the people and all the problems that and all the negatives about entrepreneurship, it can seem like a terrible thing. The fact of the matter is it can be both. And it can be both at the same time. But at the same time, it does afford us the ability to sort of create our own path, build our own life, and generate whatever sort of lifestyle we want. Not everyone that's an entrepreneur is going to be a gazillionaire, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. If you're doing what you're passionate about and you love what you do, and you have the flexibility to fit in the other things in your life that are important to you, isn't that success? The fact of the matter is we all want to achieve certain things, and they're different for every one of us. But being an entrepreneur does give you control from the perspective of being able to figure that out on your own and get what it is that you want. So the takeaway here is that experience is a great teacher. I've learned a lot in 20 plus years as an entrepreneur and a business owner, and so has every other entrepreneur too. If we listen to each other's stories and we learn the lessons in them, we have the opportunity to make our own paths to our goals and dreams faster and easier, with less friction and more satisfaction, peace of mind, and happiness too.